All right, well, can everybody hear me okay? Perfect. All right, well, I'm ready to go. So whoever's going to start the timer there. I want to share with you a picture of me at a rock concert. It's a bit dated, but it suits my purpose. If you look closely at this picture, you'll find me, my wife, although we weren't actually dating at the time, my sister's in there, the band Finger 11, and a group of very happy and enthusiastic volunteers doing what they love to do. Even though all of the uniformed people in this picture volunteer for St. John Ambulance, providing first aid at community events, they're mostly not medical people. The guy beside me had a drywall business. The one in front of me was a sales rep for a safety product company. And the woman in the middle of the front row, she was a taxi driver. What you don't see in this picture is all of the family and other life commitments these volunteers put on hold to be there that day, caring for the sick and injured at this concert. Sadly, most of the people in this picture are no longer volunteers within the organization. While they have many reasons for leaving, some of the reasons include keeping up with the rigorous training schedule on top of their family, life, and work commitments. At this point, I'm sure you're wondering what this has to do with my AEDT studies. Well, this is the inspiration for my thesis. Can I use digital technologies to provide education for these volunteers and, as a result, improve their volunteer engagement? Looking at the experience of volunteering. That's a pretty big question, and I think I started to answer it. Although, truth be told, this could really just be considered the start of much more research to come. So the first thing I had to look at was whether first aid was even a good subject to be learned through digital technology. First aid is traditionally thought of as a skills-based topic with heavy emphasis on practical hands-on learning. I was able to find a good amount of literature to support first aid and pre-hospital topics being taught through digital means. The consensus appeared to support that first aid theory could effectively be delivered online, and even skill development was possible, but there was a bit of a contentious issue at that point. Some researchers attempted to compare online first aid learning that included skill development to the physically co-located instruction that online learners did not perform the physical skills as well. However, as Roland was quick to point out, there really isn't a fair comparison here. You can't compare the two directly because there's so many other variables that come into play. Needless to say, for the purposes of the study that I was formulating in my head, the first aid instruction was a viable intervention on which to test my hypothesis. The next thing I had to look at was how, exactly, I was going to measure the anticipated change in volunteer attitude as a result of this online learning opportunity. I stumbled upon the Utrecht Workplace Engagement Survey, a robust tool that had the ability to measure worker engagement in paid, volunteer, and school contexts. It seemed too good to be true. I had a tool that someone else had put the time and effort into validating, and I could adapt it for my own needs. Engagement, like many things, is a bit of a slippery concept to define, and it was hard to tease out a definition of engagement independent of motivation and other aspects of the experience of volunteering. I used an engagement definition of a positive, fulfilling, work-related state of mind that is characterized by vigor, dedication, and absorption, which is from the same researchers that put together the Utrecht Workplace Engagement Survey. Engagement is juxtaposed to the concept of burnout, which is particularly important in volunteer experiences involving emergency services, where high demands on the volunteers can easily lead to burnout. In short, engagement and burnout are closely related concepts. Obviously, it's important to keep people engaged, but you also don't want to contribute to their burnout. This brings me to the actual study itself. I embarked on a quasi-experimental, pre-test, post-test, without control, quantitative study to test the that's a lot of really big words, by the way, to test the implementation of an e-learning platform will have on the effect on volunteer engagement. I helped develop a Moodle site for my local St. John group and had the regular instructors create learning modules to complement the weekly learning activities that the volunteers participate in. Then I asked the members to complete a modified Utrecht Workplace Engagement Survey before the website went live to gain a baseline level of engagement. 6 weeks later, after the volunteers had had the opportunity to play around with the website, I asked them to retake the Workplace Engagement Survey for comparison. There were no significant changes in the volunteer unit during that time aside from the e-learning platform being implemented. The Utrecht Workplace Engagement Survey presents 9 statements in groups of 3 that assess, firstly, how vigorous a person attacks their work, secondly, how absorbed someone is in their work, and thirdly, determines how dedicated they are to their work, as the respondent ranks their response to each group of 3 questions, for a total of 9 questions, on a scale of 1 to 6. So there's a lot of stuff on this page, and you don't have to read it. It's just what happened, just so that we're all aware. Okay. In the end, I had 24 surveys of 9 questions, each giving me 206, or total giving me 216 data points to make sense of. Each of the 9 statements in the survey is rated from 1 to 6. 6 is always, 1 is almost never, and you can see along the top how they rank out and what the words that go along with them are. So it was simple to make numbers out of the statements to play around with. However, I still struggled to make any statistical sense of it, but I was able to compare the pre-test overall engagement score with the post-test overall engagement score and found that it increased from 4.17, an average, to 4.83. And this is statistically significant with a p-value of 0.01, and I did that with a simple t-test. From there, I embarked on some descriptions of the results using the information that you see on the screen. Almost every area of engagement increased, sometimes by large percentages. For example, vigor increased from 45% positive responses in the pre-test to 77% positive responses in the post-test, suggesting that volunteers feel more vigorous after the implementation of the e-learning platform. Dedication remained relatively unchanged throughout the test period, but this was anticipated as volunteers are already pretty dedicated to be giving their time freely to an organization. Absorption also had significant increases, moving from 64% positive responses in the pre-test to 83% in the post. Dr. Bill Goodman here at UOIT gave me the privilege of looking over my data and found that vigor also had an 11% shift towards the always responses, which again was statistically significant with a p-value of 0.011. Now, for those of you not familiar with p-values, a p-value of 0.01 means there is a 1% chance the result is random and a 99% chance it can be relied on as a significant result. That being said, understand that I'm oversimplifying a very complex statistical concept here, but I only have 10 minutes to present my thesis, so give me a little bit of credit for that. There are many limitations to the research I completed. I had pretty small sample sizes. I did not have control groups. I didn't really have a long amount of time to collect data. I could go on because I tend to be hard on myself, but suffice it to say that this thesis isn't going to change the world. That's probably a good thing because Elizabeth and Roland warned us not to do that. What it does do, however, is show a trend that when you combine adult education with digital technology, you can enhance the experience of the learner. In this case, I showed an increase in engagement. I see this experience as a great starting point for future research. I want to follow up with how much knowledge the learners are acquiring from their online endeavors. See how various aspects of the platform influence their day-to-day activities. Maybe follow up with longer-term results to see if there's an actual impact on recruitment and retention, which are huge issues in the volunteer sector. But alas, there just isn't enough time in the program to do that. At the end of this little trip, I've learned a lot of things about research and how to find a needle in a haystack while looking at so many complex concepts as they interplay together. I didn't start this presentation with my thanks because I wanted to save the best for last. So, my most heartfelt thanks go out to my advisor, Jessica Clarkson. I also wanted to thank Roland and Elizabeth and Jordan for all of their help and guidance. I want to thank each and every one of you as my fellow students in the AEDT programs and my many professors as we've gone through it. But a special mention here goes to Andrea, Shade, and Sylvia as Team Awesome. I want to thank the men and women of St. John Ambulance in Cambridge and throughout the world. And most importantly, my wife and children who have supported me throughout this journey. Thank you all. Now I'll read the comments because obviously I was reading a script throughout that. So see, feel free to add in any questions you can talk to. I'll go back to that slide too. That's the actual So this is the descriptive statistics of everything. So I know that the question well, so you can actually or the statements and then how they responded, and then the bottom half of that is grouping positive and negative responses together for comparison.
Hey, Mike, it's Wendy.
Hey, how you doing?
What was the best part of your learning?
I mean, the best part, aside from being able to combine everything together, which to me is kind of the best part, is just being able to take my passion, put it together with the studies and everything else. But I think being able to prove that something that I thought would be, I mean, I know that you're not supposed to start with the end in sight, but something that I thought would.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mike, how did you come up with your coding? Like I'm rewriting part of my paper as we speak, and I was just wondering, like, how did you go about your coding? Like, what did you use as a guide?
Perfect. Well, now I get to cheat a bit in this because I'm doing primary data, so I had a simple literature review, and then the coding that you see on the screen is using an established um, survey. Like I didn't create the survey; they came up with the questions, they validated the survey. I just came in and used it. So the reality is, I didn't really have to do any coding of my own. I got to piggyback on other people's work. I got to stand on the shoulders of giants.
I wouldn't say standing on the shoulders of giants because you're pretty good. I was just wondering if you were to create your own codes, would you do it differently?
It's not something that I've considered. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that because it's just not something that I considered. Answering that question is a little difficult only because I do have two like different hats that are involved in this. So from my involvement in St. John, I have lots of kind of feedback on the website, which I had to maintain, kind of build my own walls around what I would do with like not use that information in my study, in my thesis. So I know that they enjoy the website. I can kind of speak to that. But the study itself was not powered to drive any free-form comments or feedback from the learners. It was just the survey itself. And because I administer the Moodle site kind of long term, I'm definitely going to do a lot more kind of analysis in the back end of it to see how it actually plays out on a practical side of things. I guess I'm done a few minutes early. Sorry about that. Don't. That's my advice. um, yeah, it's a lot of work. It was really stressful, especially around the research and ethics board and trying to get things up. Um, it's and then under doing the analysis and part. I don't know. I didn't do the secondary research, so I'm sure that my peers all had as many headaches at different times. So um, it's a lot of work. You have to be ready to dive in and spend a lot of time doing it. But it's easier in the end. So it depends on, I guess, where you want to work. If you want all your work up front, do primary research. I'm more than happy to yield my time to the next person so that we can all get home early.
Thanks, Mike. And again, what will be nice after this is I'm sure you'll have to continue to share some of the work that you've been doing. And if people have additional questions, I'm sure Mike would be happy to answer them as well. So thank you.